Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you lead clients, teams, when everyone's distracted? Maybe they're skeptical, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're just burnt out, maybe they're trying to figure out how to get some momentum moving forward. And really, how do you build trust when your message has to compete with 1,000 others? I mean, there's so many other people who are trying to be heard. And so that's what we're going to dive into today on the Speak with People podcast. I'm your host, Jason Raitz. We're diving into this topic with someone that I admire, look up to, been following along on LinkedIn for a while. Our guest knows how to do that. He's been doing that for a long time. Mitch Slater is the executive director, UBS Digital Communication. He's a veteran, financial worlds and media worlds, has some incredible stories. Can't wait to dive in to some of those. I just love the wisdom that he shares and how generous he is with his time to be able to do that and to help lots of other people. But he's here to help us unpack how leaders, advisors, we can stand out, build trust, truly speak with people, not at them. Mitch, welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason. I'm really, really honored to be on your show. Probably one of the best titles that I've ever heard. And I'm sure you have it patented, so I can't give it to any of our financial advisors, but it's a really great title. It's funny, I just got back from Nashville, and um, last time I was there, I got to go to the Ryman Auditorium, which is this classic place where the Grand Ole Opry was and everything. And there happened to be a band, I didn't know them, called Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors, and apparently they're bigger than I thought. And they have this song called "Find Your People," and that song just motivate. I mean, it's just like incredible. It's really, in many ways, the story of most of our lives. Is that's our goal, is finding our people. And then when I saw your show, Speak with People, that it spoke to me. So I'm excited to be here.
Boy, I love that. I love that. Well, hey, before we hop into some of my questions, you've got just a phenomenal story. I mean, just even a couple weeks ago when you and I spoke, I mean, there's just so many elements that it was just awesome. So could you share with us a little bit of your story, who you are, what you
Sure.
do, what's got you to this place where you're at right now?
Well, yeah, I always feel like if I ever wrote my autobiography, it would be called "So Close," because I've been at the right place, at the right time most of my life, and the majority of the things that have happened to me have happened obviously for reasons, but they've happened because I put myself in those situations. But I am a kid from New Jersey who loves Bruce Springsteen, who wanted to be an actor. Um, Studied acting at Northwestern for a summer program, thought I was going to go study there. And then they looked at my math SATs, and they're probably still laughing out in Evanston, Illinois about that one. And, but that worked out great. I wound up at school in DC, and GW was not only a great place to go to school, but Washington, DC, for someone who was still acting, but just starting to get into the radio world and the TV world. It was an incredible place to open up your eyes for internships. So I had the opportunity to intern at CBS News, for example, and that happened because Ronald Reagan was shot, and I was covering it, and the hospital was across from my dorm. And being the person I am, I went up to Leslie Stahl and I said, "Hey, my dorm room up there looks exactly right at Reagan's room. Would you like to shoot from there?" And they said, "Absolutely." I probably shouldn't have said the word shoot, but anyway. Um, they said, "Well, we can't pay you." And I said, "That's fine. I just don't have an internship this summer. I'm a radio TV major." And Joe Perrinan, who was the name of the producer of this segment, and the other woman whose name I'm forgetting right now, who wound up being the movie Broadcast News is all about her. I wound up having that internship at CBS News. I wound up having an intern. I DJ'd. I interned for Charlie Rose. Probably the most exciting internship was at a rock and roll station, DC 101, when they said on a Friday afternoon, listen, we fired our morning guy. You're the only one that's going to be there at 5:30 in the morning. Some crazy guys coming in from Detroit. Just do whatever he tells you and we'll be in. I'm like, okay. 5:30 in the morning, in walks this lanky guy with all long hair. He goes, hey, I'm Howard. I'm like, oh, hi, Howard. I'm Mitch. He goes, you're now Boy Mitch. Go in the studio. Put the cans on. You're going on the air. And I'm like, Mr. Stern, I'm not supposed to do that. They said, just go with it, go with it. And being the performer, I'm like, okay, let's go with it. And suddenly he says, what's the big highway here in Washington? I go, the Beltway. He says, great. Suddenly there's noises in my ears of dinosaurs. And he goes, our man in the road, Boy Mitch, is out there on the Beltway. And Mitch, you're being attacked by dinosaurs. And I'm like, yeah, Howard, it's crazy. There's a T-Rex over there, and he's going to step on the Capitol. I don't know what's going to happen. I just played with it and had a blast. And the station manager came in, and a lot of this is in the movie, Private Parts, and went nuts on him, went nuts on me. But I still did the gig for 5 or 6 weeks. I was there when Howard met Robin. Was really, was what a different human being that man was that is today. He's one of our best interviewers, I think, out there. And it was a great experience, like everything else. I had no idea what his career would become. That fits in with the So Close. And I was also going to college with a guy named Alexander Baldwin, who got me into all kinds of things, some I won't mention, who turned into Alec Baldwin when he left GW and had no interest in acting. And here I wanted to be an actor. And he's walking along the streets of New York, and a woman comes up to him and says, you know what? I'm a casting director for the soap opera. Heard him speak, heard that great voice he has, and boom, he has a career. But the key moment for me really was when I interned for Charlie Rose, and Larry King, who was someone I idolized on radio and would listen to him all night. I walked up to him when he was a guest and I said, Mr. King, I'm graduating in 3 months. I would love to take you to lunch. He said, all right, kid, meet me at Duke Zebert's. I'm there every day around 3:30, 4 o'clock. I showed up one day. We sat, we talked nothing but baseball for about 3 or 4 hours, nothing else. Not interested in where I was from, my background, career. We just hit it off. I'm a Met fan. He's a Brooklyn Dodger fan. And we talked all about sports. And at the end, he goes, so you want to work on the show? And I go, oh, yes, Mr. Stern, Mr. Stern, Mr. King, I have a box of rejection letters from every radio station in the country, but I don't really care because the only person I would want to work for is you. He said, great. We actually do have an opening for our all-night producer, 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. I'm going to mention this to the executive producer who called me the next day. And a month before graduation, I showed up in Arlington, Virginia, and I went on the air. I was on the air that night, but I was taking phone calls and bringing Larry coffee. And probably the highlight for me was bringing the famous guest from the green room into the show, into the studio. And by famous, I mean Frank Sinatra, Sid Caesar, Bob Hope, Wayne Gretzky, Willie Mays. I mean, you talk about boyhood heroes in 1982. How lucky was I? But you know what? This fits so well with the title of your show. It took me years to realize what that experience really meant to me because I didn't know where the rest of my career was going to go. But watching Larry, and what a great listener he was, as he said to me, he never learned anything with his mouth open. And the curiosity that man had, we'd have James Michener. He wouldn't read the book. Whatever it is, he wanted to ask the questions that the person laying in bed in Syracuse or Topeka or Alaska was thinking at the time. And that's what he did. And I watched the master at work for 2 years before I had the opportunity to go to LA and get my first TV job on a game show. And that happened because they tried to turn Larry into Johnny Carson. and that didn't work. This is before Ted Turner walked in and gave him CNN. So it's amazing how, and I've said this to my kids, I kind of peaked in my early 20s, but the experiences that I have stayed with me, and every other success that I've had, and the ability to recover from challenges or failures came from that experience, I truly believe. And it was all about, speaking, but being a good listener. And as my hat says from Hamilton, being able to talk less and smile more.
Wow. Wow. Just incredible. Man,
Yeah.
oh my, when you were setting up the story about who walked in, I was trying to figure it out in my head. And I was thinking, okay, I'm from Detroit. So I was like, okay, who's coming from Detroit? And so partly I was thinking, okay, is it going to be Ted Nugent? Is it going to be, Bob Seger? Who was it? Those,
Seeger, right. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Um,
that's just
I know,
amazing.
I know. Crazy.
That's,
But and the irony today is I'm friends with Baba Booey, because I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, as people could see Bruce and Clarence behind me. And as is Gary, and as is now Howard, shockingly, after making fun of him for years. And I've said many times, so many times to Gary, he's sick of it, that, I could have been you. And he's like, why would you want to be me? And I go, well, yes, I would have had to put up what Howard did to you all those years, but I think after your fourth home, maybe, or whatever, it might have been worthwhile.
so walk us through the journey from that season to the financial season.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I had a lot of fun in my 20s, worked in LA on a game show, actually was a contestant on a show called The Love Connection. People can go on my LinkedIn and see a story. People magazine wrote about it late last year. It was the 35th anniversary. And they were comparing Love Connection to The Bachelor and things like that. So I had a great time in LA. Shows got canceled, got moved to New York, worked for a guy named David Susskind, a legend in the industry. Of course, we worked on some one-man shows for PBS. He died of a drug overdose. I moved to Philadelphia, worked for my brother's brownie business, and was doing whatever I could do. Wound up at a public TV station, radio station, actually partially working for Terry Gross on Fresh Air, which was just starting out, a really wonderful show that's a podcast now. And but I still was making no money. And I met this girl, of course, and she had her first job in New York as a writer. And my dad said to me that summer at the Jersey Shore, he said, "You ready to get serious?" I'm like, "Well, I am serious." He says, "Well, I want you to meet." And my dad was at Merrill Lynch as an account executive, second career. He was 60 at the time. And it's hard to believe he was younger than I am now. And he said, meet my sales manager. And I met this guy, and this guy said to me, he said, you have communication skills. You clearly can handle rejection. We'll teach you the rest. And that's exactly what Merrill Lynch did. Merrill Lynch had a phenomenal training program back then, and I learned the business. I wound up working with my dad. I wound up starting my own team beyond that, and then worked my way to where I am at UBS. But I was an accidental financial advisor. I've said this publicly now, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to any client, but in many ways, that was the longest acting job I've ever had, was
Mm.
becoming a financial advisor. And I struggled with imposter syndrome, because when you get successful at something that you don't really, that wasn't your plan, you really weren't thinking about it, it kind of messes with your head. But at the end of the day, I realized, as my friend Ted Rubin says, it was all about return on relationships,
Mm.
not the ROI. And the relationships where I met the most amazing people. I had the opportunity to help them with financial planning and everything else that comes along in our job, which is really a job of managing expectations more than managing money. And I loved what I did. I loved working with my dad. What a great experience. My partners, Ann and Crystal, over the last 20, 25 years. But I knew this creative thing inside of me was just beating at me. It was like, I got to do something creative in this role. So when they handed me a phone book and a telephone and said, "Good luck, kid," That lasted about 2 weeks, and I said, "I gotta do what I do best. I gotta get up in front of people." So I started doing seminars, and I started finding topics that I thought were a little unique and different, like how to raise financially responsible children, for example. And that's how I started building a book and going to trade shows and speaking. I probably fed the entire state of New Jersey at one point, but I learned that I needed to be out there. And then fortunately, I was able to start a financial radio show in the 90s when I worked for Merrill Lynch, Financially Speaking, which was I syndicated and interviewed an amazing people. And one quick story I'll throw in there just because it's timely, and Warren Buffett announced his retirement a few weeks ago. I had no qualm in calling anybody to be on the show, and who, of course, wouldn't want to interview Warren Buffett, who was just as famous in 1996 as he is today. And I literally looked up the number in the phone book. I called Berkshire Hathaway. Hi, can I speak to Mr. Buffett? Hold on, please. Hi, this is Warren. True story. I said, Mr. Buffett, this is Mitch Slater. I'm the host of Financially Speaking in New York. I also am a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. And he says, I'll stop you there. I don't do interviews, but I really give you credit for calling me. In fact, I don't do this all the time, but what's your address? And he sent me a beautiful letter, typed out letter, signed, wishing me well with my show and in my career, which I had framed for years. And that gave me the courage to call number two on my list, Peter Lynch, who was running the largest mutual fund at the time and a genius in our industry. Came up with so many great sayings like, it's not about your time in the market. It's not about timing the market. It's your time in the market. And I wound up getting an interview with him on the show. And I love doing that. And yes, I got business from it, but it was feeding the bear. I mean, it was just giving me that opportunity, and that led to TV. I did a lot of TV with Merrill Lynch, where I would get interviewed on different topics. It would show up on Eyewitness News all over the country, and then I did some cable stuff here. And then I met a guy when I came to UBS. I was referred to, named Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V. And I'm sure you and many of your listeners know Gary. There's no one else like him. I was referred to be his financial advisor, but really I learned so much about the new world. I mean, literally, I felt like I was, Columbus landing on America, and he was my tour guide, and he taught me everything about social media and podcasting, video. I tried to convince my firm to hire him. They didn't quite. Well, they saw the vision, but let's just say the regulators in our industry, things take a
Sure.
little time. But I knew I wanted to do something. So I started asking for a podcast in 2013, and I got one in 2018. They let me pilot it. I was successful at it. I interviewed so many wonderful people, from musicians I know like Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls or Steve Van Zandt, to actors, the kid who played Eddie Munster, to Danica McKellar from who was on the Wonder Years, to John Taffer, to CEOs, and obviously people tied into our industry, poets, anyone that would fascinate me and maybe the listener. And I did 100 episodes, and then I was asked, about 3 years ago, to consider retiring as an advisor, which you can do, and your partner takes over your book, and you do get compensated, and move into UBS's national sales area in my current role, where I am kind of I call myself the Jewish evangelist, I guess, because I'm out there just spreading the good word about podcasting, video, LinkedIn, now AI, and training financial advisors into this brave new world that parts of the industry were in 10 years ago, but our part is just getting into now. And I have to tell you, Jason, I've never loved a job more than what I'm doing now. And
Mm.
it's really nice at 64 years old to feel that way, to feel like I'm making a difference and I'm giving people, I'm just giving them ideas that they didn't think they could do, and watching what's happening, and I'm seeing amazing results. So it's really exciting.
Wow. Wow. I mean, shoo wee.
Yeah.
There's so many unbelievable opportunities there. I love now that, so So you're encouraging, helping, challenging advisors to say, "Hey, use your voice." Because what I love what you did to build your business is you went, "Wait a minute, the normal path might not be mine, the way for me to be successful, but hey, here's a path that I could." So when you set up those seminars, then that was kind of that first relationship, and then people could take steps to hire you or build closer relationship, those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the same thing. And it's just, you know, the people were people in 1987. They're the same people in 2025. They're just living in a different world where, everything is here versus other places. And if you are going to play in traffic in this industry, honestly, in any sales industry, I mean, this is where you got to be. This is your downtown, your city. And how are you going to get there? And how are you going to get into people's heads that they know that you're competent and that you're a good person? It's one thing, and many people, there's a lot of titles you can have in the financial advisory world, and you can be a CFP, a CFA, a CHP, a CRPC, a CDFA. I mean, alphabet soup. You can be lauded by Forbes, by Barron's, by Shook, by whatever. That's great. Mazel tov, as I say to everybody. However, what do you like as a human being?
Wow.
Can you speak with people? Prove it. And by proving it, maybe do a podcast, maybe do a short form video. Get the message out there. Content is always been king. It's king, it's queen, it's jester, it's everything today because that's what people want. They may hear about you and you're really good in what you do, but when they listen to you and they realize, wow, this person's really interesting, or you know what? I love that he's involved with the Alzheimer's Foundation. I love that
Yep.
he talks a lot about helping women after divorce or whatever the topics are,
Yeah.
or athletes or entertainers or business owners, whatever the subject is. Take your true identity and put it out there. Not everyone can do that. I am an open book as just about anyone can be. Way too open, my kids and my wife would say, I'm sure. But I do think that people likability is what matters, right? I mean, when I was in training, and I'll tie this into this because when I trained at Merrill Lynch, we had a guy who went on a on a chalkboard at the beginning of training, and he put the letters IASM, and mic drop, left the room. Said, "That's the key to your success." And we didn't know what he was talking about. He came back a few minutes later. Al Martello was his name. And Al wrote, "I am sold myself." And then he filled in the rest of the word with an EN, a TH, and a U, and an S, enthusiasm. And he said, if you can succeed in these two areas, people will like you. You have to be sold on yourself,
Mm,
not necessarily the stock, the product, or whatever, but yourself and belief in what you're doing and how you can help people. And you also have to do it in an enthusiastic way, because if you do it and you're just sort of so about it, will people really feel comfortable giving you money? This is an intangible business, right?
right.
It's not like you're handing them, a brand new car or the latest iPhone. You've got to get their trust, right? It's all about trust. And that was part of it. And I always felt like that was, again, one of those pivotal points in my life, and for many that were trained by this particular guy, that if you could be enthusiastic and be sold yourself on whatever it is, I think you can figure out a way through just about anything. And life is going to throw a lot of curveballs at you, and you kind of never know what's coming up next. And it's interesting. We're doing this interview today because I have a little curveball coming up in 10 days. I'm having heart surgery. I'm having a valve replacement. Not Was not on my bucket list, but doctor heard a murmur. Luckily, I go to a doctor every year. It's a genetic thing. I was born with it. I didn't expect it, but it's 2025. It's not a big deal. They go in, they fix it. 6 to 8 weeks later, I'm pretty, hopefully, fully recovered and back at it. But I'm going into it. I mean, sure, I'm a little scared. I'm human, but I'm going to go into it feeling positive. I did a lot of research and I know that this is going to be successful. So I'm going to be there being enthusiastic right until the point that they hit me with all of the anesthesia. By the way, did you know, this is interesting, little fun fact, that they actually put fentanyl into anesthesia for most surgeries
Huh.
for one main reason, so you don't remember anything about the first couple of days. Because apparently the first few days waking up from many surgeries, having never had anything like this, is not great. So hopefully I will forget most of, I don't want them to give me too much fentanyl or anything, but just give me enough that, I'd like to remember the part afterwards. But um, just a little fun fact in my research,
Absolutely.
and you'd be amazed, right? Like YouTube, how many videos people have blogged their entire process of doing this. I'm an open book. I'm going to skip that one though. I can, I will do some voice notes and somehow talk about it afterwards. But people don't need to follow every step of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the years that you've spent, you were trained, you've taught others, you've been in the trenches. What do you think right now, as you kind of forecast, look ahead? What are some of the most common communication mistakes? And you've already touched on a few of them, but what are some, the ones for leaders to kind of clearly navigate away from these, giant mistakes?
Well, You know, at Gary Vaynerchuk's company, they have a woman named Claude Silver, and rather than being the head of HR, she's the chief heart officer, which I
Hmm.
love. And they really spend a lot of time helping their employees, and it may be helping them out of the job. It may be, whatever it is, but it's really being a good listener. So I think the biggest mistake continues to be not listening, talking too much, and not asking people's questions about their lives. You never know what's going on. And if you're going to have a successful company, and I think throughout history, and you look at most of the successful companies where people stay there for their entire careers, it's because they know Joe on the line, or Jane, who's been designing the dress, whatever it is.
Yep.
They've gotten to know them as people. So I think communication skills, and I get asked this question a lot, and I think that it's really important for people to be able to get out and speak. I know there are a lot of introverts out there. I'm married to one. I am one at parties. I mean, it's not, it happens to us all different throughout different things, but you have to step out of your comfort zone. And if I could, have a little magic wand, I'd want everybody to go take an improv class tomorrow and
Yep.
and just be able to act and prepare yourself and be able to deal with different situations. But I think it all revolves around getting back to what I said earlier about developing a return on that relationship. And that's at the end of the day, and I'm not, I'm a little dramatic right now going into heart surgery. I know I'll be fine, but it's kind of the time you think a little bit about legacy. And when I think about it, I think about all of the relationships that I've had in my life, and how important these people are to me. And unfortunately, a fact of life is you get older, you lose some of these people, like your parents. I lost
Yep.
my mom a year and a half ago at 96 and a half, who lived her life in her 90s like nobody lived their life in her 90s. She danced on stage with Steve Van Zandt and Bruce Springsteen. She was the face of the J-Date campaign. All of these things this incredible woman did, with a positive attitude. And but it's because that you somehow have to find that within you, and it's so hard. And I don't mean to make light of it, because people go through, what my surgery is, an epic tragedy. Okay. Someone I just found out has ALS. That's an epic tragedy. A young child with a disease, those are epic tragedies. These are things that can be fixed. But getting back to your question, communication, I think, is really, really important. And the other thing I would say is a mistake, which is more of a communications mistake that I see people making, because LinkedIn is a big part of what I do. Stop posting PDFs, stop posting articles and links. Nobody's reading it, nobody's clicking on it. Post videos, post audiograms. Let people know the real you and understand their algorithms and start commenting, because LinkedIn is a place for engagement, which is like a magnet. You've got to have both sides of it in order to work. And that's why their algorithms right now are so much more powerful, because they want people commenting and developing relationships. I don't
Yep.
know, there's 6 billion people now or some crazy number on LinkedIn. And most are just either not doing anything, or they're posting this article or whatever. But instead of posting the article, take your phone and shoot a little video and say, I just read this, and the three main points are boom, boom, boom. And you should take a look at it. And if interested, call me. I'd love to work with you or whatever. That's where we are. I mean, this
Yep.
is our society today. You can choose to ignore it. You can dig yourself a hole. You can, pretend like it's the old days. But, as someone who grew up in the 60s, grew up and seen a lot of change. Of course, I think about my mom, who really saw change. Like, she was born the day Lindbergh did his flight. So, you have to be able to roll with the punches and change with the times. And I don't
Yep.
care how old you are. I mean, I just think that, that's so important, that you have to stay current.
Absolutely. Boy, that's so good. I was back in January, I was in Minnesota with a group of Cetera advisors, and we're having a conversation, and LinkedIn comes up, and most of us are like, yeah, of course, we're all on LinkedIn. And one of them was like, nope, nah, I don't have time for that. And it was like someone, nails on the chalkboard, because we were all like, wow, like, wow, I mean, it's kind of a bold stance, but then not to utilize this amazing opportunity that you have in front of you. Yeah, it was something else. And so I love some of those tips for LinkedIn that you gave us. Oof.
Well, yeah, because if you lived in a period where, if you wanted to run a business or start a business and you just had a telephone and a phone book, I mean, I couldn't have dreamt that there'd be this place that I could go, that before, let's say I was having a meeting with you, Jason. I mean, I could walk into that meeting and I would know so much about you, whether it's from LinkedIn or from other forms of social media. And I'd be able to talk about your love of fly fishing or whatever it is, or well, you're also a big Bruce Springsteen fan. I've been to 300 shows. What was your favorite? Whatever these things are,
Yep.
you know, that's take advantage of it. And I think many people are, and I think certainly many successful people are. And um, it's great to be in this society right now where all these things are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I'm not a Bruce fan. My band is a Hootie. Like, if I turn the camera, I've got my Hootie wall.
Hootie and the Blowfish?
Yes, I
You
love
talk about
Hootie.
Hootie. Well, I mean, how could you not? That guy's one of the best voices. I think anyone that has converted the music that he's done to the country music he's done. Listen, I don't care who I mean, I obviously very favor. Bruce is a big deal, and I've
Of
been to a lot
course,
of
I love
shows,
it.
and I know the members of the band. But you know what? Brian Wilson dying yesterday knocked the hell out of me.
Yep.
I mean, I had the opportunity. Quick story, and I was very involved I'm still involved in an organization called Little Kids Rock, which after the kind of the No Child Left Behind, all these schools didn't have arts programs, they didn't have music programs. So Steve Van Zandt and a number of other musicians got together and formed this organization that gave people the opportunity with Gibson guitars or Yamaha to bring this stuff into the schools. And then Steven took it a step further to teach rock and roll to some of these kids, because you take a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old, and you're going to try to force them to learn a line of music of Bach, but really they want to play Taylor Swift, all right, or they want to do Beyonce or whatever it is. Teach them those songs. So having the opportunity to you know be at all of these events and just see the difference this made in kids' lives is enormous. And I just think that there's so many great musicians. And my quick story there was we had an event at Cipriani Wall Street. I think it was in 2015. And already, I mean, I think Alice Cooper, Joan Jett, Stephen, and a few more big names were there. And I'm there at the rehearsal because I'm on the advisory board, so I was there early. And I knew Brian Wilson was supposed to come, and then I heard that he needed a plane from Vegas. It was very last minute. And of course, Steven could pick up the phone and call his friend Jimmy Iovine, who had just sold Beats for $1 zillion to Apple. And Jimmy, of course, got Brian on that plane and got him there. And it's around 4 in the afternoon. The people are setting up, and I'm standing there watching Brian Wilson. He's sitting there with Darlene Love, who's just an incredible musician, and they're singing "Don't Worry, Baby" and "God Only Knows," two of the greatest songs ever written. And this guy comes next to me. I'm not even paying attention, and he touches my arm, and heavy British accent. He goes, "Can you fucking believe this? Unbelievable! I mean, is there a better song than God Only Knows?" And I look to the right of me, and it's Elvis Costello, and I'm like, how does this happen in this universe where this dumb schmuck from Springfield, New Jersey, who couldn't get a date to the junior prom, is sitting here and Elvis Costello is telling him how great Brian Wilson is? I mean, these are the moments in life. My brother writes a blog called Moments Slater, with play on our name, Slater. He's a marketing genius, sold a brownie business, done a lot of successful things in the wine industry. And these were just these moments, and you cherish those moments. And getting to see Brian Wilson live singing those two songs, I mean, it hit me hard, just like it hit me with Prince, and it hit me with Petty, and it hit me, with Henley, not Henley, Don Henley's still alive, Glenn Fry. But, obviously all of and John Lennon. I was 20 years old. I was on the air for my college radio station the night he died. Yeah, so we're so grateful to live in an era where there are amazing musicians like Hootie and the Blowfish as well, um, all different types. and
Right.
and I think it's really, I don't care what music you love. Music is the soundtrack of my life, and that includes show music. I could listen to Rent, I could listen to Hamilton, I can listen to Fiddler on the Roof or
Yep.
Pippin or whatever. I mean, my wife would like me to turn it down half the time, but I love music, and I just think you have to, you know, when I think about, look at your shirt and, speak with people. It's music. Is there a better language to speak than music?
Right. It's so good. So all the interviews, when you're hosting a radio show, you've got celebrities, you've got people of influence, you've got financial experts, all these years of meeting with clients. Now, these years of pouring into leaders. What are some of the key lessons about developing influence that you learned, learning from all of those people, especially if you're sitting down with a young leader and they're just like, "Hey, I've got to grow my influence."
Mhm.
What's some of the stuff you've learned about growing your influence, especially across all of that, that very cool range of experiences?
Well, you have to be a good listener, and you have to ask good questions. And if you really want to help people, listening to them, just having them listen to you speak all day isn't going to get it done. You have
Mhm.
to really understand where they came from, what their backgrounds are, what excites them, what I would much rather hire someone that is passionate about something. And I don't care if it's fly fishing or knitting a chicken. I don't know, whatever. I don't know who knits chickens. It's an old Woody Allen joke. But anyway, I just, having passion, I think, is so important, as we talked about enthusiasm. So I find the most successful people ultimately are people that are very passionate about what they do. And it doesn't matter whether they're, behind the counter at the diner, whether they're greeting you when you get on the airplane, whether they're, helping you manage your retirement, whatever it is, but
Yep.
they've got passion and they've got fire in their belly. And I mean, as Gary Vaynerchuk says all the times, you're gonna die soon. I mean, it's a sad thing, but I mean, we only get one chance,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I just think that that, and the older you get, the more it means. And I just feel like I want to be able to find someone's passion, find out what gets them to tick, and then that's what I'm going to work with. And all of that comes through being a good listener. Because if not, you're going to miss it. And I think, I'm not going to get political or go in any of those directions, but the biggest problems in the world is just, leaders that just talk and talk and talk. And they have no consideration about what the rest of the world or the rest of the country or anyone is thinking. And they have no respect for human rights and no respect for each other. And we're all in this together. I sound like a High School Musical. We're all in this together. But I mean, that's that's really what it is. And let's all figure out a way. And it's not easy. Trust me, I was ready to kill my contractor a week ago. So, I'm getting a kitchen done. So, these things aren't easy. But the reason I wanted to kill, and I did not kill my contractor, he's still alive. The reason is because the guy never listens. He just talks, talks, talks. And there were problems because he wasn't listening to what we were telling him. And unfortunately, you can only do half the job, right? You have to have a partner. You have to have someone on the other side that is being a good reactor or a communicator. But I try to teach people as much as I can to be open, just be open to everything, and give things a chance that maybe you think wouldn't work. And it's hard at being in an, I've been in an industry for 38 years now that it's not really natural to think outside the box.
Yeah.
But I live outside the box. That's my address. And for, better or worse, that's how I lived. Doesn't mean I don't have the war wounds and I had managers that, you know, may not have appreciated that. But at the end of the day, I knew that this is what worked for me. And I knew that, if you know, ultimately, I knew I was right. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I love
I
that.
think the world was sometimes the world has to catch up to where you are.
Absolutely. Boy, that's powerful. It's profound. Um, Before we kind of wrap up the conversation, you've
Mhm.
given us, I mean, I've taken a page and a half of notes. This has been such great wisdom, especially for building relationships, connecting. We're building this online communicators library. Our listeners can go and get ideas for new resources. Is there a speaker that you've heard, you regularly hear, you heard once, you were just blown away? You highly recommend them.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say, I mean, forgetting, I'm trying to keep, politics or people that, are obvious names out there that I think are really great communicators, but just in general, in the world of, in the business world or in the communications world, um, I would probably, honestly, I don't think I've heard a bad TED Talk. I mean, I love listening to the TED Talks, and there could just be regular people, and they speak really, really well. I mean, I'd say one person that I think is really fascinating to listen to that I've loved is a woman named Neil Godfrey,
Mm,
E on the end of the Neil, and she's written 27 books about kids and money, women and money. Um, she represents, I think, young presidents organization, and she's their speaker, and she's talking now about gray divorce, and she's someone who has remained topical. And we're 14th in the world in financial literacy in America,
mm,
and we don't teach basic money skills in school. In fact, one of the things from I've heard Neil Godfrey say in her speeches is that, and it's true, is like, she grew up in a generation where mom vacuumed wearing pearls and everyone sat down at 6 o'clock for dinner. And it was easier to talk about sex than it was money. That really hasn't changed. People
Mhm.
are still not having those basic, discussions about money. So what I love about her is that she really takes on financial literacy and financial education, because I think if people just get a little bit smarter and learn just basics, and I'm not saying that kids today who don't know how to write a check are going to fail. I mean, the world has changed. It's Venmo, but it's just understanding the basics, because there is no excuse for someone 30 today, male or female, when they lose their spouse, to say, "Oh, this one took care of it, that one took care of it, and I don't know anything. I don't know anything." You know what? We have so much information at our fingertips, whether
Yep.
it's through Google or ChatGPT today, or great podcasts like yours, to learn this information. There is no excuse to do this. So I would definitely say Neil Godfrey. Obviously, Gary Vaynerchuk is a phenomenal speaker. Any opportunity that you get to hear him speak, I
Absolutely.
think
I love that.
is a bit of a is it's really a bit of a gift. And I'm, you know biased, obviously, because I know him personally, but I have learned so much from him. Um, and I guess the last person that I would say, and I didn't get the chance to interview her because they wanted $100,000, but the young woman, the poet, who spoke at Joe Biden's inauguration, she read a poem, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and I
Mm.
wish I could quote it today, but, and I followed some of what she's written beyond that, and, it's sort of like a Maya Angelou, and it just really the insight, and I just have such admiration for people that are creatives
Yeah.
and have the right speech at the right moment. And again, it's not about Democrat, Republican. It was just about who she was, and giving a speech that I thought was, you know, it was really a poem, but being able to use that creativity at the right time. And of course, I'll say Bruce Springsteen, because I think the lyrics that he's written are just about the answer to anything you need to know in life. And it's not just about girls and cars. There's a lot more there
Yes.
if you go deep.
I love
Um,
it. I love it.
as Mr. Dylan has in many of his in his songs too.
I love it. Let me ask you, you run into a friend, they're about to go to a desert island. They can only bring one book. One book. What's the one book you send them with?
Probably a strange choice, but Winston Churchill's autobiography.
Hmm.
I think still one of the best things I've ever read, and I think there's like 4 books of it. The story of his life in his own words, because in my view, that man saved the world. And people may not have liked him for this or that, but learning his view of the world as we went from 1900 to 1960s, and everything that happened in the world. I think the words of Churchill probably are the religion that, if I was going to follow a cult, it would probably be Churchillian. So it's hard for me not to include that.
I love it.
I'm
I
going to
love it.
I'm going to throw in a side, though, because Ulysses S. Grant also wrote his own memoirs, and there's a great book. The same guy who wrote Hamilton on Grant, but if you read Grant's autobiography, which takes you through every battle in the Civil War as well as his presidency, from his perspective, I'm always going to choose history. That's what I read. I love history, and I would probably throw in some Plato and Socrates, as a little side hustle. But the answer to your question would be
I love
Churchill's
it.
autobiography.
I
Yeah.
love it. Where's the best place we could send our listeners to find out more about you or connect with you online?
LinkedIn's obviously going to be the first place. I would tell people they can certainly find my podcast, Financially Speaking with Mitch Slater, which is on a hiatus now, but it's on Apple and Spotify. I am, as I told you, I'm an open book. Just Google Mitch Slater. I'm not the rock promoter, sadly, who died a few years ago, who, believe it or not, was my bunkmate at Camp Winnetou in Pittsfield, Massachusetts when we were 8 years old. What are the odds that two Mitch Slaters
Come on.
would be bunkmates and wound up becoming friends? He wound up being a very famous rock promoter with a guy named Ron Delsner, and produced a lot of amazing concerts. But so as far as the living Mitch Slaters, I think I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm always happy to talk to people at any time and help them. And I love mentoring young people. I mean, Whitney Houston is buried just down the street from me here, so I guess I will say children are our future, and, you can
Love
quote
it.
her there too.
I love
But
it.
happy to help.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much. This has been so incredible. Love hearing all your stories. Thank you for taking us on a storytelling masterclass. We even get to
Well,
storytelling. We'll have to do that for part B, a couple months after your heart surgery, because I can't wait to dive into any more. So thank you again.
oh, well, thank you so much, Jason. This was really an honor. I've had so much fun being on this show, and like I said, I've listened to a lot of your past episodes, and I'm always learning something, and I think that's the whole goal of a podcast. And you are speaking with a lot of interesting people. I'm just honored to be one of them.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.